religions. And so I kind of think being true to being a faith community, what do faith communities do? Faith communities, I don't think should just be sort of the spiritual arm of the environmental movement, and doing whatever
Yeah.
the environmental movement wants to do. And well, the faith community can come in and kind of hold signs and make sure that we get the policies we want. I don't really think that's the most important thing for religion and ecology. I think what would be more important if religion would be what religion is. If religion is a place where people become whole, if it's a place that provides healing, if it's a place where things are reconciled, if it's a
Mm,
place where we can become better human beings, maybe healed and better human beings are the kind of human beings that have a better chance of healing and reconciling things
mm,
planetarily or environmentally or ecologically. And I
mm,
think that's really important. And maybe the last thing I'll say is it strikes me that particularly in the West and in the US, we are so disconnected from the natural world. We are so disconnected from God's creation. And that was true, when I was in college. There were studies out there that the primary ways that Americans related to nature were like going to the zoo, watching nature shows on television, and going for drives in the country, all of which are
yeah.
lovely things to do. But what about actually being outside and getting your fingers dirty, kind of a thing?
Mm,
These days, here's my smartphone, right? We have all this concern over the phone-based generation, smartphone-based childhoods, and people are more anxious and more depressed. And it seems like an antidote to that is actually precisely reconnecting to the natural world or to God's creation, if you will, and to ourselves and to our own bodies. And I think that there's sort of an embedded spirituality in our relationship to others. Humans are very relational, and that includes not just our relationship to people, but our relationship to all things. The delight that children have in connecting to creatures and birds and whatever else it might be. And I think there's some very natural sources there for the kind of spiritual growth that and healing and reconciliation that is just good for humans. And if it's good for humans, maybe it might be good for the planet. Because you know
mm,
what? This is still true. People are more motivated to do something about care for creation because of their spirituality, their religion, or even their own care for humans. And yes, we also care about nature itself, but unless we foster more relationships with
mm,
all of that, that care is not as likely to overcome the other forces in the world. So
mm,
I think it's a call to soaking into ourselves. Maybe it's a call to sort of, if you will, it's like that Sabbath rest. If we're so busy all the time trying to save the environment, we will become exhausted and and maybe what's the line? Pope Francis early on in Laudato Si has this line where he's talking about Saint Francis, and he's talking about, well, Saint Paul as well. It's something like, rather than a problem to be solved, the world is a joyful mystery
mm,
to be contemplated with gladness and praise.
mm,
And I think that brings me back to just your basic orientation to life. Life is a gift. This creation of which we're a part is a gift. And the most appropriate response to a gift is thanks,
yeah.
thanksgiving and praise. And if we're so dead set, like everything's wrong, we got to fix everything, we got to fix everything, that's not the fundamental thing that's going on. The most important thing that's going on is that life is a gift, and we should be thankful for that. And if we open up our hearts in gratitude, if we allow ourselves to be a little bit more healed, then this fixing things that are actually already okay, like, the earth will be
Mm,
fine
mm,
without us. Yeah. But maybe we can kind of take some cues from how beautiful and wonderful things already are. And then that, I think, becomes a more natural source for really caring to preserve and protect the things that are so dear to us because they're such beautiful and gracious gifts. And
mm,
that sounds more like religion and spirituality to me than the latest campaign about, what phrase shall we put on our sign?
mhm.
That kind of thing can actually motivate a really effective advocacy. That can motivate
Yeah.
effective programs. But I think we get too caught up in trying to do everything and we forget to just be who we really are. And I think when we can sink into those relationships and be thankful for the very things that have made us, that maybe becomes a source of resilience, a source of perseverance, a source of hope. And I think that's something that we desperately need, and particularly in these times. So to me, that's the direction I'd like to see things tend, is towards those
Yeah.
very hopeful and healing aspects of our relationships in this work and
Yeah.
with the life that's around us.
Mm.